The city's lights were traveling in the windows of the skyscrapers, while the night involved St. Francis. Among the scattered pedestrians that came out of a technology conference, a man of cap and black jacket walked without haste. It was Elon Musk, almost unrecognizable in his casual dress, lost in thoughts as he went to the parking lot. Have you ever wondered how a simple date can change the course of a lifetime? What if the person you least expect has the key to a fresh start? The truth is that opportunities come in the most unlikely places, and what we do with them can define not only our future, but that of others as well. When Elon turned the corner, something captured his attention. Sitting in the curb, a man held a piece of cardboard with faded lyrics, "Homeless veteran, any help is welcome." The scene, common on the city streets, had something different this time. The man did not ask, did not extend his hand, just watched the movement around with a serene but distant look. Intrigued, Elon stopped. He looked around, as if seeking an explanation for the impulse he felt. Then, without hesitation, he approached. "Can I sit down?" he asked, his voice cutting the tinnitus of the night. The veteran raised his eyes, surprised. For a moment he hesitated, but then shrugged. "The floor is public." Elon smiled lightly and sat next to him. "What is your name?" "Bernie." "And you?" "Elon." No reaction, no flash of recognition. And, curiously, Elon found it refreshing. Bernie studied the billionaire for a moment before asking, "And what brings a guy like you to the curb?" "I think curiosity. It looks like you have a story." Bernie sighed and leaned back on the concrete wall behind her. "We all have." Bernie kept her eyes fixed on the horizon for a moment before continuing. "Body of Marines, 20 years of service. Afghanistan, Iraq, choose one. I went out with a pension and some scars that no one can see. The pension did not last. Not my wife." He hit lightly on the piece of cardboard by his side as if it explained everything. Elon heard in silence, absorbing every word. I had seen statistics on homeless veterans, but hearing the story of one, there, so closely, was different. "This is a difficult road," he said. Bernie laughed without humor. "It could have been worse. I'm still breathing." The silence extended between the two, filled by the distant noise of the city. Elon looked away at the plate on the floor and then returned to Bernie. "You look different. Most people in their situation would be screaming, drawing attention." Bernie shrugged. "It makes no difference. People see you, or not." Elon's phone vibrated in his pocket, but he ignored it. Instead, he leaned forward, supporting his elbows on his knees. "What do you need, Bernie? What would really help?" Bernie squeezed her eyes, suspiciously. "Why do you care?" Elon smiled aside. "Because I can." Bernie studied the man's face in front of him. I had already found many people who stopped to talk, some for pity, some to offer empty advice. But there was something in the way Elon spoke, in the firmness of his tone, that made him believe for a moment that perhaps that stranger really wanted to hear the answer. He scratched his grey beard before answering. "No one asks me that for a long time." He pulled a long breath and indicated the void in front of him. "I've had a life, you know. House, wife, 2 children. The Marine body gave me a purpose, but the purpose means nothing when your mind doesn't let you rest." "Depict?" Elon asked bluntly. Bernie nodded. "It's like a shadow that doesn't disappear. Every loud sound, every crowd. It's like I'm back." He touched the temple with 2 fingers. "Doctors tried to help. Pills, therapy. But it doesn't change what I saw, what I did." Elon heard carefully. "And your family?" Bernie's face closed. "I pulled them away. I didn't want to, but that's what happens. My wife held as much as she could. But when I didn't get a job anymore and the bills started to accumulate, she left. It took the children. I do not blame her." Elon frowned slightly but was silent. I felt Bernie needed to release those words. After that, it was a slow decline. First the house, then the car. I tried everything, night shifts, temporary services, but no one wants to hire someone like me. He gestured to himself, to the jacked jacket and the worn boots. "When you get here, it's like the world you decide that you no longer exist." Elon kept his gaze fixed on Bernie. "But you are still trying." Bernie released a dry laugh and raised the little cardboard poster. "Do you call it try? This is survival, not life." "But you're still here," Elon insisted. "That tells something." Bernie held his eyes for a moment before dodging. "What else could I do? The streets are not easy, but I've seen worse." "Like this?" Elon asked, intrigued. Bernie rubbed her hands, trying to push the cold away. "A lot of people think that being homeless is the worst that can happen, but it is not. The worst is to lose hope. I saw good men I fought, losing everything. Some followed the same path as me. Others, well, not everyone gets here. Elon nodded, absorbing those words. Then tell me, if you could have anything now, what would it be? Bernie blinked, surprised by the frankness of the question. He hesitated, stirring distractedly at the edges of the cardboard in his hands. Honestly, I just wanted a chance to work again, feel that I am useful. I can fix things, cars, motorcycles, equipment. If I had a small workshop, some tools, maybe some customers, I could start over. Elon nodded slowly. Why didn't you try? Bernie laughed bitterly. Because that requires money. And here, he looked around. It's hard to get money. Elon took his cell phone from his pocket and began to move the screen. All good. Bernie raised an eyebrow. Okay, what? Let's resolve the dwelling issue first. I know a place that can help. It is temporary, but it is clean and safe. A good starting point. Bernie blinked, suspicious, but at the same time there was something new in her gaze, something he hadn't felt for a long time. Hope. Are you serious? Elon raised his eyes from the screen, a small smile forming in the corner of his mouth. I don't say things I don't want to do. Bernie stared at Elon for a few seconds, as if he tried to find a prank in that. But all he saw was determination. For the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to believe. Bernie said nothing for a moment. Just stayed there, staring at Elon as if he tried to understand if it was real or more an empty promise that would end at all. But there was something in the calm and determined manner of the man in front of him that seemed different. And then? Elon asked without looking away. Bernie inspired deeply and slowly released the air. Are you sure? Yes. The veteran ran a hand over his grey beard, absorbing the idea. For years he had learned not to expect anything from anyone. The only constant in his life was the street, and promises were just empty words thrown into the wind. But there was Elon Musk, one of the richest and most influential men in the world, sitting beside him in the curb, speaking as if everything was simple. I don't know why you're doing it, Bernie said, still suspicious. Because I can, Elon repeated without hesitation. He made a quick call, and a few minutes later, Bernie saw a black car parked around the corner. A man in a suit descended and walked toward them. This is Greg, Elon explained. He will take you to the shelter I mentioned. It is a quiet place without confusion, without bureaucracy. You can sleep in a clean room, take a hot shower and eat right. Bernie looked at the car, then to Elon after returning to the car. His mind shouted not to trust, not to allow himself to create expectations, but something inside him wanted to believe. And then? He asked, crossing his arms. Then we see the issue of work, Elon said. I know some people who can help you with tools and space, but first you need to recompose yourself. Bernie shook her head slowly, still trying to soothe everything. And what do you earn from it? Elon smiled lightly. The satisfaction of seeing someone starting over. The silence stopped between the two. Bernie finally sighted and stood up, feeling the weight on her knees after so many nights sleeping in the cold of the concrete. He looked at Elon for a moment, trying to find a reason to reject that chance, but for the first time in a long time, he didn't find one. Okay, he said, let's see what it gives. Elon nodded. Good choice. Bernie took a piece of cardboard and folded carefully before storing it inside the jacket. He didn't know exactly what would come next, but for the first time in years, he felt he had a chance. While Greg guided him to the car, Elon remained sitting in the curb, watching. The city was still in motion around them, indifferent to that little moment. But for Bernie, everything seemed a little different now. Elon looked at the dark sky above San Francisco and smiled. Maybe that was just a small gesture in the great scheme of things, but for a man it could mean everything. The black car silently slid down the streets of San Francisco, leading Bernie to an unknown destination. He was looking out the window, watching the city pass like it was in a distant movie. The lights of the posts reflected in the glass, creating a shadow game on his face marked by time and battles. He said nothing, just kept his arms crossed and the strict posture, a reflection of the years in which he learned not to cling to expectations. Greg, the man sent by Elon, drove in silence, respecting the veteran space. When they finally arrived at the scene, Bernie frowned. The building was discreet, without flashy signs, but well maintained. There was a small garden at the entrance, and the reception looked more like a simple hostel than a shelter. No queues, no chaos. Here we are, Greg said, getting out of the car and opening the door to Bernie. The veteran hesitated before leaving. Part of him still thought that was too good to be true, but it had already come there. He needed to see with his own eyes. Upon entering the building, she was greeted by a middle-aged woman with a welcoming smile. You must be Bernie, she said. "My name is Claire, welcome." He nodded with a short, still suspicious movement. "I'll show you your room," Claire continued. "We have some simple rules, nothing very rigid. The important thing is that you have a safe place to rest." Bernie followed the woman by the hall. The walls were clean, and the air had a slight smell of fresh coffee. Nothing there remembered the crowded and chaotic shelters where he had tried to stay before. When Claire opened the door of one of the bedrooms, Bernie stood for a moment. The space was simple but worthy. A tidy bed, a nightstand with a lamp, a small desk, and a private bathroom. After years of sleeping in the cold, that looked like a luxury. "Feel free," Claire said. "The bathroom has clean towels and some hygiene items. And if you need something, just call me." Bernie went slowly, running her hand through the mattress as if she had to confirm she was real. The rough fabric of his jacket brushed against his fingers, a reminder where he had been. Claire realized her hesitation. "You know, Bernie, accepting help doesn't mean weakness." He looked up at her, surprised by the observation. "Many who come by take time to understand that," Claire continued. "But you have a chance now. No need to carry everything alone." Bernie took a deep breath, slowly nodded. "Thanks." Claire smiled and left the room, leaving him alone. He sat on the edge of the bed, feeling his weight on his shoulders slightly diminish. His eyes wandered in the room until they landed in the mirror next to the bathroom. He hardly recognized the man he saw there. The deep, dark circles, the misaligned beard, the tired expression. But under all that, there was something different, something he hadn't seen for a long time. Hope. The next day, Bernie woke up before sunrise, a habit she has never lost since her days in the Marine Corps. After years of sleeping in the open, it took her to accept that she was in a safe place. He sat on the bed for a few minutes, feeling the silence around him. No noise of hasty steps, no one arguing for a space on the floor. After a hot shower, the first one in a long time, and a strong coffee in the community room, he felt it was time to find out what his next step would be. When he left the building, he found Greg waiting next to the same car from the night before. "Good morning, Bernie. Did you sleep well?" Veteran frowned. Still strange, that treatment. Better than in years. "Excellent. Elon asked me to take you to a place. He thinks he may interest you." Bernie arched an eyebrow. "What place?" Greg just smiled. "You will see." Half an hour later, the car stopped in front of a modest mechanical workshop around the city. The smell of oil and burnt metal was familiar to Bernie, bringing memories of a time when her hands were always dirty with grease. As he got out of the car, he saw Elon waiting at the entrance of the workshop, his hands in the jacket pocket. "Good morning," Elon said with a small smile. Bernie looked at him suspiciously. "What are we doing here? You told me yesterday that you wanted to work again. Feel useful." Bernie crossed her arms. "Yes, and I also said I need money for that." Elon shrugged. "Money is no problem." Veteran laughed lightly, shaking his head. "Easy to talk when you have billions." "The money doesn't matter, Bernie," Elon said, being serious. "What matters is what you are going to do with this opportunity." He made a gesture to the workshop behind him. "I talked to the owner. He is in need of a good mechanic. Someone experienced. I said, I know a guy who can be perfect for work." Bernie blinked a few times, trying to process those words. "Are you saying—" "The job is yours if you want," Elon confirmed. "Decent salary, flexible hours, guaranteed customers. A beginning." Bernie looked at the workshop, then to Elon. Part of him wanted to refuse. I wanted to say it was too good to be true, but deep down he knew the truth. If I didn't accept it now, I may never have that chance again. He swallowed dry and let out a long breath. "When do I start?" Elon smiled. "Just now." Bernie squeezed her fists by her side, feeling something she hadn't felt for years. A purpose. Without another word, he walked into the workshop, ready to start over. The metal sound against metal echoed through the workshop, while Bernie squeezed the last screws of an open engine. His hands, before shaking with cold and hunger, now firm, handled the tools with the accuracy of those who never forgot their true skill. The smell of oil and grease impregnated his clothes, and for the first time in years he didn't care. That meant something. It meant he was there, working, building something again. It was strange how life could change in such a short time. There are only a few nights he was sitting in the curb, invisible to the world. Now he had a job, a roof over his head, and most importantly, a reason to move on. Elon appeared at the entrance of the workshop, watching him with his arms crossed. "Then, how are you going?" Bernie released a dry laugh, cleaning her hands on an old cloth. "I think I still know what I'm doing." Elon smiled. "I knew I would know." Bernie looked around, seeing the other mechanics working, talking, laughing. It wasn't just a job, it was a fresh start. A place where he was not just a homeless veteran, but a man with value. He turned to Elon, this time without usual skepticism. Why did you do that? In truth, Elon was silent for a moment, as if he chose the right words. Because I can, he repeated, but then he added, and because I believe no one should be forgotten. Bernie stared at the billionaire for a few seconds before he watched slowly. So, thank you. Elon smiled. Don't thank me. Just make it worth it. The two men stayed there for a moment without saying anything else, because deep down they both knew that this was not just a story about charity or luck. It was about opportunity, about the power that a single gesture can have in someone's life. Bernie took a deep breath, feeling the weight of recent years starting to dissipate. He would never have imagined that any night sitting on the sidewalk could lead to all this, and maybe that was the greatest lesson of all. Life has an unpredictable way to change when we least expect it. Sometimes all we need is for someone to see us, someone who extends his hand when everyone went straight. And when this chance comes, it is up to us to hold it and never release it again. Bernie's story is a powerful reminder that no one is truly invisible. Everyone has a story that is worth listening, and sometimes everything that is needed to change a life is the willingness to listen and act. Goodness, when combined with action, can turn even the darker circumstances into opportunities of hope and transformation. If this story has touched your heart, reserve a moment to reflect on your own faith and share it with someone who may need it today. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories that inspire, challenge, and approach us.